some Indigenous leaders are triggered by Alberta independence. To be clear, I don't think these people represent all Indigenous people, but let's take a look.
First Nations leaders are calling on Alberta's premier to put an end to a push for the province to separate from Canada.
We are doing something that we will not stand for any of this talk of separation. We knew that the vote wouldn't pass.
What a dumb thing to say. What a tyrannical thing to say.
We knew what we were in for when we came to this legislature. We've seen it time and time again, the disrespect that the MLAs have for our people in those rooms.
These chiefs go on TV and they just complain, and their complaints are vague. It's not even targeted complaining. The disrespect. What is this? A lot of these chiefs are just professional crybabies. I'm sorry, but it's true.
A dozen First Nations chiefs, band councillors, and elders attended Alberta's legislature yesterday. They said they came to join the NDP in pushing forward a non-confidence vote. That motion was shut down by the government. Chiefs and other Indigenous leaders say Alberta's referendum questions on separation infringes on their treaty rights, and that they signed treaties with the Crown, not Alberta.
People in Alberta don't get to vote? They don't get a say? That's so, again, tyrannical. We'll take a look at another short clip here.
Some UCP ministers believe the First Nations chief non-confidence vote in the government is unfair. The Assembly of Treaty Chiefs want Danielle Smith's government to stop the calls for Alberta to separate from the rest of the country. Yesterday, the UCP government rejected an NDP motion for MLAs to hold a non-confidence vote in the legislature. Today, some ministers said the chiefs are being too hard on them.
Do you think the chiefs are being unfair to your government by passing this motion? I mean, I'm trying to get back to the motion.
Yeah, somewhat.
The government of Alberta needs to make sure that any question put forward is compliant with the Constitution. That's abundantly clear. We have taken particular and specific steps to making sure that First Nations and treaty rights are respected, and we'll continue to do that.
Tomorrow, 7 chiefs from Treaty 6 will be in London. They will meet with the King to affirm treaty relations with the Crown.
Some more coming here, but here's a quick one on King Charles and his apparent reluctance to wade into Alberta independence.
I think we've seen a reluctantness on
behalf
of King Charles to engage on this issue directly. Obviously, everything that he does is tries to be more than arm's length from anything political. So him coming and speaking to the House of Commons, for example, that might be as much as we get. It might be as much as the chiefs get without, a firm declaration of something, because I would imagine that his talking points are going to be a lot like the ones that I just gave, which are that this process will play out and that nothing has happened and, they respect treaties and all of these other things. But, it could just end up being...
How about the chiefs respect average Albertans and their right to vote? How about that?
That the likelihood of the separation referendum completely failing. It seems like they're having a really hard time gathering the signatures needed. I think we've seen...
And many Indigenous leaders did meet recently with King Charles. Let's take a look at that.
A delegation of First Nations met with King Charles today to invite him to Canada. They also raised the Alberta Separatist movement. The delegation of 7 First Nations leaders from Treaty 6 are from Saskatchewan and Alberta. They presented His Majesty with an invitation to Canada next year to mark the 150th anniversary of the signing of Treaty 6. They also took the opportunity to shed light on the separatist movement in Alberta. The chief says the Crown's obligation is to protect and uphold the treaty, as their relationship is with the Crown.
It's a little confusing because I remember just a few years ago, a lot of Indigenous people, at least on television, being very critical of Canada and its history. So this is all a little confusing for sure. I know not every Indigenous person thinks the exact same thing, but still, this clip is from about 4 years ago. The statue reference in the upcoming clip was actually in Prince Edward Island, but this sentiment was all over Canada a few years ago. To a large degree, it still is. Oh, Canada's colonialist, blah, blah, blah. In 2021, many people thought it was problematic to even celebrate Canada Day?
Well, as we approach Canada Day, calls are growing countrywide to forgo the celebrations altogether.
So it's definitely a little confusing that many people now are so triggered by Alberta independence.
It was an understated statue, Canada's first prime minister on a park bench in the cradle of Confederation, Charlottetown. Now it's gone, removed by workers after a city council vote. In its place, dozens of children's shoes signifying the disturbing discovery of bodies buried at the residential school in Kamloops, BC. MacDonald was a proponent of residential schools, and Indigenous leaders say his role as a nation builder cannot ignore that fact. The removal symbolizes the reckoning that is forcing Canadians to come to terms with the figures who built the country, but also entrenched policies that abused and damaged First Nations. Ryerson University.
Closing out with this recent video here, it's titled, Alberta Treaty Chiefs Come Down on UCP Government as Non-Confidence Motion Shot Down. Let's take a look. There's some heckling. You can hear it.
Order! This is the People's House.
Alberta's treaty chiefs giving an earful to the UCP and the legislature speaker.
Yes, all peoples.
All we're asking for you is to denounce separatism.
You could hear that. Someone shouted out, denounce separatism.
All we're asking for you is to denounce separatism.
Chiefs from Treaties 6, 7, and 8 were in the legislature watching Monday's afternoon sitting. It comes 2 weeks after the chiefs representing Treaties 6, 7, and 8 unanimously passed a vote of non-confidence in the provincial government. The reason? Rising separatist sentiment festering unsafe conditions for Indigenous people.
This is unsafe. What?
Conditions for Indigenous people.
This is not a game. This is not a game about pick and choose where you want to go. If you want to go somewhere, you come and tell us if it has something to do with us.
Separation. Whose idea is it to separate? Who really supports it? How is it that at the forefront of Alberta politics today when we have all these pressing issues?
The Alberta NDP
Why don't you just let people vote? How about that?
This and made it official by putting it on the legislature floor, but unanimous consent was required to continue debate. The UCP, likening it to a political stunt, fought back and killed the motion. The opposition also devoting much of question period to Indigenous issues and the possibility of a separation referendum, this forcing the Premier and other cabinet ministers to defend the government's record.
What we're doing on this side is we're addressing the real grievances that Alberta has with the 10 years of mistreatment by Ottawa.
No question can breach the Constitution, and the reality is that we will honor the treaties 6, 7, and 8 in this province. This is non-negotiable, Mr. Speaker.
Alberta's government respects the treaty rights of First Nations as well as the established rights of the Inuit and Métis peoples, recognizing their importance now and for future generations.
But these answers are not enough for the chiefs.
If you can't put up with this weather here today, what makes you think you could put up with us?
Bravo, bravo.
You know that?
Well said.
We're all here to stay. Get used to it.
The First Nations are vowing to continue their fight against a separation referendum. Meanwhile, the petition still has 2 months left to collect signatures. James Dunn, City News, Edmonton.
Again, is it not a little confusing? Because I thought Canada was this colonialist bad country. Anyway, with that said, please like, please subscribe. Have a great day.